So there are people who used to be on our team, but now they're on Indigo team who are dedicated standards people. So we have people like Paul Cotton, Andrew Lehman, Jonathan Marsh. Paul Cotton's on the X-Query working group. Jonathan Marsh was on XPath and was involved in X-Include. Ashok Malhotra, who's on the XML schema working group. So we have a couple of people who work on XML standards and web services standards, and like they sit on the bodies and they talk to the product teams, and they give us feedback on here's a feature we're thinking about adding to this spec, or here's a timetable for the spec, and we give them feedback like, wow, that's really complex to implement, or like this doesn't really fit into what we think our customers want. And of course, like since the W3C is kind of like my job, just at a larger scale, there are compromises with different companies. Oracle wants this one feature, IBM wants this other feature, Microsoft wants this, and good standards typically go, well, we won't have this feature and we'll just target these scenarios. But the interesting thing has been with the W3C, the more people have gotten involved, the larger the standards and more complex they've gotten has been. So we do a lot of interacting with the standards, with our standards people to communicate to the W3C what we like to see in the standards and what we have difficulty with, or interpretations and so on, and they tell us what the W3C thinks and keep us up to date with what the standards groups are doing. I don't sit on the standards bodies like our standards people do, but based on the feedback I've seen, like we all have different sets of customers, which is another interesting point, right? Like simple things like if you're a Windows user, you have certain there's certain user functions in Win32 that don't exist on Unix, for instance. So just concepts like let me pick one, like a date time type, for instance. So let's say the W3C says, oh, we have a date time type and we define a date time as any date between before 10,000 BC and 10,000 AD. Okay. And on Win32, maybe you can't represent that type, or the CLR can't represent that type, which is true. Yeah. It seems ideally, a customer would want the widest possible date type, and but we would go, for our platform, if you gave us a date type like that, we wouldn't know what to do with it. And we have competitors who are like, but it works fine for our platforms. Yes. So we're both right. Like for Windows or C# customers, whatever, that's not good for our customers, because now you're giving us data that we can't handle. But if you're on some other platform where your native types can support this kind of data, then you're fine. Sure. And we have various compromises like this across products, across platforms, and sometimes the compromises go our way, sometimes they don't, and we have to do a whole bunch of work. One example is like the XML schema recommendation has I think regular expressions. You can have negative regular expressions. Like you can say, I want this character range minus A or something. I want everything from between the letters A and Z minus F. So anything that's not an F, right? And the CLR can represent this. So like I had to go and talk to Kit George a whole bunch of times, and we went back and forth for a while. And so I told him how important it was for us to be standards compliant, but we didn't have the time or the resources to actually re-implement all of regular expressions, just because just for this one bit of compliance. So we just had to push on them, and we had a bunch of other requests, and we compromised and said that was our most important request, and these ones were less important, and they gave us that feature, which I feel will benefit our customers.